but I'll make them available to you before the end of the semester. That way you can look at them. I don't normally give them back during the semester.
Well, I just wanted to just see which one
You
I'm
owe me
in.
all your labs.
You're okay.
And will we use our previous test to study?
You turn John's into plant, going to the grocery store. Okay, well I didn't. You got to, you're gonna get zeros on the two. That's great.
Keysville, did y'all connect?
Hello.
Yes.
And South Boston, Nina, hello, you there?
I mean,
Wonderful. Good morning. Dwayne, just for the fun of it, I sent you an email asking about these meat labs. I found a bunch of the grades. There's 2 columns in your Blackboard, but only one was showing. Some of the grades were in one spot and some were in the other, so I just fixed it to where everybody's grade is typed into both columns. So.
Oh, okay, thank you. I thought I graded a bunch, but I don't know what's happened to I've had issues with Blackboard this year. Thank you for fixing that.
Yes, I just discovered it like 5 minutes ago because Caitlin's in here saying, I did it, and I've got a grade for it, and I'm like, I don't see it, so I popped the hood, and there we go. But we still have, there's a half dozen people that still haven't done it, so.
Yeah.
Those of you listening and you haven't done it, jump on it. Anyway.
Yeah, there's about 8 that haven't done it.
You know, if you're talking about the ones for the plant lab, the way I've got the class built, structured, the overall average for your plant lab reports constitute a minimal 25% of your grade. You know, some of the folks in here are animal and not taking plant, but the plant lab, it constitutes a 1/4 of your grade. So I highly recommend
have to have
this
these
turn
in
in.
because it's a 1/4 of your grade for John's.
Yes.
Send them to me.
Mr. Harris, I have one more question for you.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
Looking at the college catalog, you offer a class in horticulture, and as an online student, how is that conducted?
Which class are you speaking of?
Horticulture?
Yeah, which class?
Oh, is there more than one?
7 or 8.
Oh, I didn't. Well, maybe.
Just send them to me.
Okay. I guess the intro one. I guess. I don't know.
The intro to Hort class will be basically the same content of what we're doing in the plant science class.
Which one would you recommend that I sign up for?
Well, we've got, I do a principles, which is an environmental factors class that Tech recognizes. It's an HRT 110.
We got
Then we do a couple of others, but the HRT is 110 is a good class. And I do it online if you need to.
I'll talk to you about after class.
So how about the hands-on experience one? Is that the lab with it?
That makes it really hard to do. I try not to do those online.
Okay.
John, when is your plant science exam? Tuesday?
We made that announcement, but we made a clarification in it today, Dwayne. When I went to looking at it, we haven't covered the volume of material that I normally put in that first test. So I changed that today, and we will not do it next week. We're probably going to cover a couple more chapters before we do it.
Okay, that's fine.
It'll
I
be
needed to know
weeks.
for my biosecurity when I my body because I was going to do one in there next week as well. I didn't want it the same day was off.
I had originally thought
Okay.
we'd do it Tuesday, and then we're not.
That's fine.
Dwayne, one more thing I learned is some people posted their labs in the SVCC Lab 1 forum, so there might be some stuff in there.
All right.
But anyway,
Okay, I'll check that and see if they're posted in there.
Dixie's and Honey, are we supposed to post them in both places, or?
I just wanted you to email me the lab. Was it? Now, what Dixie and Tom have set up for you there, if they want you to post them in that forum, that's fine. That's what Dixie's done in the past.
Yeah, that
But I
form, the
just get-
SVCC, yeah, that SVCC Lab 1 forum was where you post your write-up about the farm tours we did last week, going to Dalton Farms and Parish Farms. That's what that forum was for. I guess we had it there a little too soon.
She always liked for everybody to interact.
And Dixie and I will cover the grading on those.
But you won't really find it. I don't much.
Okay. Now, we've been looking at the cattle chapter in chapter 7 and talking about cattle, and we've got several people here that are on cattle farms. Can anybody tell me what happened to the price of cattle this week? What was that, Robert? No. Fell down. It fell Tuesday, I think. It dropped. Live cattle on the futures, which are the live cattle, are the ones getting ready to go to slaughter. They'll be slaughtered. They dropped down to, for October, today it opened up at $100, or it opened up at $103.80 per hundredweight. It was $1.03. Guys, that's the lowest it's been in how many years? 6, 7 years? It's yeah, I'm thinking it's about 07. It was pretty doggone low. But it's low. It's tanked. The feeder cattle, and I'll show you, I can put it up here. I don't know if y'all can read this. These are the futures on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, or CBOT, Chicago Board of Trade. And then on feeder cattle, the September futures, which will close out tomorrow, I think. Yeah, Friday. It's dropped 57 cents today since it's open. Right now, they're at $1.34, and the feeder cattle, they're about your 700 to 800 pound cattle that go into the feedlots. So a lot of guys around here, are selling calves from the cows, and they're weaning 600 pound calves and 600 to 700 pound calves, and some of those cattle will go directly to the feedlot. Others are weaning those calves and putting some weight on them and getting them up to about 800 pounds to sell them. So they're dropping. It's not good. So hopefully things will pick up in the cattle industry. But right now things are dropping.
Why is that?
I don't really know, Keith. That's a fair question. There's several factors that I think that's having something to deal with it. The past few years, where cattle's been so high, these feedlots have been feeding cattle out to really heavy weights, and they're being slaughtered, and the carcass weights, instead of weighing from 600 to 800 pounds after they're skinned and gutted, they're weighing about 1,200 pounds. So we're getting about another 400 to 600 pounds on those carcasses, and that's a lot of meat. And
consumer savings?
I haven't seen a drop in the price at the grocery store personally. Have you guys?
Nope.
Really? We haven't, hamburgers still $4 to $5 a pound. At least around here it is. I think also another thing is the lot of meat, these carcasses, they'll hang in cold storage for a while before they send them to give them a chance to age, and then they can kind of store them a little bit for a couple, 3 weeks. And there's a lot of those carcasses hanging in cold storage right now, and they're heavy. And then Brazil, the USDA, or some trade agreement the government's made to ship meat, cattle meat, or beef to us. So, and sell it in their grocery stores for the same price American beef is, they're going to float it. So that's not good. So I don't know. I really don't have a good answer for that. It's scary. But if you're looking at buying cows, now would probably be a good time to buy them because they're cheap. If you can hang on until the prices start to go up, because they will go up. It's just a matter of time. And it may drop more before it goes up. But it's scary out there in the cattle industry. Anybody have any questions of anything we've covered with the cattle industry, or any questions regarding that before we start? No, not anymore. It used to be Chicago and Kansas City and Fort Worth used to have these humongous stockyards, and cattle were delivered there and traded there. But not anymore. They're all tore down, other than for a museum type deal. And it's these futures are all traded on paper. If you get stuck and you buy a load, buy a future or buy one, and you end up, you've got to pay the shipping to your farm with those cattle. If you're going to try to, just hang on and sell it at a higher price or something, sell that future at a higher price. But those are all gone. The slaughterhouses throughout the Midwest, and that's what they base their price on. They're going to give feedlots. No, they're companies now. It's called the Chicago Board of Trade, and another one's called the Chicago Mercantile. And they trade cheap. Deal with they don't deal with the product themselves. They're trading on, they're speculating that cattle will go up in the future, and you can buy a contract of cattle. You can buy a contract that will be delivered in October of 2017 or 2017. Yeah, of 8-weight steers if you're buying feeder cattle. And if you hold on to that and don't sell it, then come October, you're going to have a load of 8-weight steers delivered to your house, and you're going to have to pay the shipping on it. If the price goes up and you say, okay, I can sell this contract and make some money, and you sell it, you're out of it. Does that make sense? Or you can sell a contract in hopes that it will go down lower and then buy it back before you have to deliver those cattle. Well, you don't need, these people don't even have cattle. They're just buying and selling paper, hoping that the prices change so that they can
But Dwayne-
sell the paper or they can buy it back at a later date. Yes, sir.
You know, it's not only cattle, they've got corn, they got wheats, they got pork bellies, you know, it's an entire.
Right.
And-
Oil, milk, gold, whatever commodity you want, you can buy these contracts or sell these contracts. And people buy and sell them all the time, kind of like stocks on the Dow Jones. The price that your boss is going to receive is going to be dependent what that future price is. Theoretically. A lot of people use that as a risk management tool, and I'm sure Tom will talk about that in his business classes on how to manage your risk and using the futures to lock in a price. It gets pretty complicated, and I really don't want to go into it here.
There are occasional farms here at farm that do that. That they'll sell quarter cow, half cow, full cow. Yeah, because we've done it back when I was growing up. My grandmother, we would take one of our cows on a farm, slaughtered just for us and split them.
Right, and somebody else owns those cattle. Y'all don't own them. They're poundage cattle. You're just being paid by how much they gain. Right. So anyway, the futures, Tom, I'm sure Tom will probably cover that in one of his business classes for risk management. But you know, you can keep track of what's going on in the dairy, and you know what dairy prices are, and for milk and beef prices and pork and so on, and corn and wheat, rice, whatever it is you want to watch, you can keep up with that. And it's a tool that we can use as producers. Now, we talked about the domestication and history of cattle. We've talked about genetics and stress, and reproduction. We've talked a little bit about cattle nutrition, you know, being very basic of what they require in terms of nutrients, and we talked about how their stomach is compartmentalized into 4 chambers or 4 compartments. Anybody remember what the 4 compartments of a ruminant animal is? You're going to have to know it for the exam, so I would recommend you to learn it. The abomasum, that's the true stomach. The omasum. Reticulum. Okay. What's the 4th one, anyone? Where's my cattle people at? Come on, guys at Keysville. Y'all raise cattle.
Amazing.
Okay, we mentioned the omasum and the abomasum and the reticulum. What's the 4th one?
The rumen.
The rumen. Thank you. Okay, so we talked about a little bit about that. We've talked about the industry and how important it is to the U.S. economy. We've talked about the beef production and how the different sectors of the beef industry with the cow-calf producers, the backgrounders or the stockers, the feedlots, the purebred breeders, and the slaughterhouse, the slaughterhouses, so that's what we've covered so far. Now, when we think about cattle, particularly beef cattle, how do we select which animals we want to go back into our herd for replacement cows. What are traits that we look for? What are some traits we look for in our beef cows and our beef bulls?
Like
Weight
long
gain.
base.
Okay, what did you say?
Like I know, like we like a heifer that's like kind of long and it's got good, it's tall kind of and stuff like that.
Okay, so you're looking at conformation, how they're made. You want correct feet. You want the legs to be structurally correct to reduce lameness. You like length of body. Why is that length of body important?
For like the bulls and stuff.
Well, for your bulls or your
And-
cows or your calves,
and
why is that body length important?
It'll
How long
also it'll produce like better calves. Hopefully, the calf will have that type of gene in them.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully that calf will come out long-bodied as well. I'm asking why is that? Why do we want that longer-bodied animal?
Isn't that where the money is for production?
Yeah, what's the most expensive cut?
The loin.
Where's the most expensive cuts of meat in a steer?
The loin.
The loin. So if you got a long cow, you got a long loin, don't you? And you get all those steaks out of it. It adds value. Now, when we talk about cows, instead of feedlot cattle that we're slaughtering to get that meat, what's that length of body afford that cow? Calf. It gives her plenty of room to raise that calf, to carry that calf, doesn't it? So length, that's why people like, kind of a longer bodied animal. We look at, Robert said earlier, weight gain. Why is weight gain important? Good weight gain, okay? You could call it feed efficiency or average daily gain. Why, or growth, we could probably even look at growth, right? Because we want a positive weight gain. Why is that important? Why do we want our cattle to grow, our calves to grow quickly?
Because that's quicker we can get our money or profit.
That's right. We get paid per pound, don't we? So if we can get those calves to grow fast and put on some weight, we're going to make more money. Whether you're a feedlot operator or you're a cow-calf producer or you're a stocker operator, background in cattle, you want your calves to grow. You want them to put on weight. So we look at conformation. We look for, we want them to be, look good. We want certain traits. We want good muscling in our cattle. We want length of body. We want structurally correct legs. So, we don't want a bunch of crooked leg cows out there because they're going to get lame on us, right? I don't know about where y'all live, but where we live, they got a lot of hillsides to go up and down and travel. Some of our cows have one set of legs shorter than the other, where they travel around the hill all the time. If you travel around the hill the other way, they fall over and roll down the hill. I'm making a joke. That's how come we don't raise race horses here. One set of legs is shorter, they can't run straight.
You got left-handed ones and right-handed ones.
What was that, John?
You got left-handed ones and right-handed ones.
That's right. So if you live on the correct side of the mountain, you can raise them because they run left-handed around the track. if you live on the wrong side, you got to send them to Australia where they run the opposite direction.
So you started the tradition of tipping cattle?
You bet. We put them on flat ground, and they can't stand up straight, so you can just tip them over easy. But in all seriousness, you want your legs, you want them to be structurally correct because they'll go lame on you if not. Yeah, you want those ribs. You want them to. I'll use the term spring of rib. And I know you guys aren't familiar with that term, or a lot of you guys aren't, but you want those ribs to come out, for volume, especially in females. Well, in livestock terms, you call it spring of rib. They have a good spring of rib. If they're a flat-sided animal, those ribs just come straight down. There's not a lot of room for that cow to carry her calf. So you want those ribs to kind of come on out, have a nice spring of ribs, some length of body, structurally correct legs. We want our calves to be growthy. We want them to grow. We want them to be efficient with feed. We don't want to have to feed a cow 10 pound or a calf 10 pounds of feed to gain 1 pound. We want that to get down a lot as small as we can. Because our feed cost is about 70% of our production costs in the cattle industry. So we want them to be very feed efficient and utilize what we give them to the best of their advantage. So what else do we look for? Well, you say hip placement. We're probably going to be looking at the size of that pelvis opening, because we want them to have enough room to have a calf. So that's good to look at. How about carcass quality? How important is it if Keith, you'll probably remember this. These other people probably don't, because they're a lot younger than we are. Used to be, I know, I got to be careful. I didn't want to say John, because John would get mad at me as well.
I get even too.
Yeah, you get even with me. Used to be when you flew, get on an airplane, they would feed you a meal. If it was, 3 or 4 hour flight. And they always gave, they give you a choice. And if you ordered beef, man, that thing was tough. It was awful. And it wasn't a very good experience eating beef on an airplane. Whereas, you go to a steakhouse and you get a nice tender steak, very flavorful. Which would you prefer? Yeah, you'd prefer the steakhouse. I mean, I was a broke college student. I've been in y'all's shoes, okay? One of the guys that I roomed with when I was at college lived on a dairy. He was from a dairy farm. And they had a cow get down. It was a young cow. I don't even know if she'd calved. It might have been a heifer. But she got down and wouldn't get up, so they slaughtered her and cut up the meat. And we ate a lot of that dairy, that cow, that young dairy cow. And it was tough, She wasn't fattened up. I think she might have been in her first lactation or something. And for a broke college kid, that was great because we were broke and we were getting protein and meat. And you just had to chew it a little bit longer. But it's nothing I would want to pay for, And, that's kind of a common thing on a farm. You know, we have a cow get down, a young cow get down, we'd slaughter it before it died and put it in the freezer. Or a lamb, or a young ewe. Uh, so, I worked on farms, so, my boss was a very generous guy, and he had been in our shoes before, so we'd slaughter, we'd get a cow down or something, we'd slaughter it, he'd send us home meat. I never bought meat when I was in college. My boss always kept us supplied in meat. Whether it was lamb burger, hamburger, I mean, it might not have been the best quality because, they weren't fed out on a feedlot, but hey, when you're a broke college student, beggars can't be choosy, right? And that's kind of common on farm life. Uh, some people I know, or a lot of people raise their own, keep a calf back and feed it out and slaughter it, and those are good. I'm not, they're grain fed and fattened up to be slaughtered. But what I'm getting at, I guess, is we want quality. We go to a steakhouse, and we get a steak. You go to an upper end one like Ruth Chris or the Chop House or something, you're going to see streaks of fat throughout that cut of meat, right? That's called marbling. When you have fat within a muscle, that's called marbling. And then you have the fat in between muscle groups. But that marbling in a cut of meat is what gives it tenderness. The fat gives it flavor, and it's a really good eating experience. And you have a quality cut of meat. So meat quality is very important. Nowadays, with the advances we've made in genetics, with mapping out the genome of cattle, we can look to see if a bull or a cow carries that marbling gene. It is a genetic trait, and we can look at it. We can see if they carry that trait, and because they'll pass it on to their calves. So meat quality is important. A lot of people, when they sell to a feedlot, or not to a feedlot, but to a slaughterhouse, there's two ways that they'll price that meat. They'll either buy the animal as is per pound, or they will price that animal depending on the carcass quality. If the animal has enough muscle, when it's slaughtered and it's graded with the yield of red meat and the amount or the quality grade that we went over in our first lab, with the different quality grades, they'll base their price on it. And if they have good quality, they raise good cattle and they have good quality meat, they get paid higher. And so it is a selection criteria. And one of the farms, go ahead.
I was going to ask, when does the term choice prime, when is that put on the meat?
That's put on there. It's after slaughter. They'll slaughter an animal. They'll slaughter a steer or a heifer, and they'll let that carcass chill for overnight, say 24 hours, and then it's graded. And it's graded on, there's two different grades. There's a yield grade, and yield grade is basically how much muscle compared to fat is on there. A yield grade 5 animal is a very fat animal. A yield grade 1 is very lean. Ideally, we like about a yield grade 3. That's ideal. You got a lot of muscle and you got enough fat. You don't want them, we don't want we don't want a lot of fat in our meat, right? So that's ideal, is that yield grade 3. And that's just pounds of meat, basically, that sellable meat. Now, quality grade like prime, choice, select, that is based on the quality of the meat. So they'll take that animal, they'll take that carcass, and they'll slice that carcass between the 12th and 13th rib, and they'll expose that loin. And they will look at how much marbling is in that loin, or that ribeye muscle between the 12th and 13th rib. And they'll look at that marbling, and if there's a lot of fat in there, they'll look at two things. They'll look at the size of it, how many square inches that muscle is, and they look at the marbling. And if it's big enough and it has a lot of fat in there, it'll go prime. If it has a less amount of fat, it'll go choice, and less will be select, and it just goes down from there. Does that make sense?
So what's a call grade then?
A what?
Call, C-U-L-L grade?
Call grade? I don't know of a call grade.
It's also called canner sometimes.
Okay. Quality grades, it's based on maturity of the animal, on the age of the animal. So an animal less than 30 months of age is going to be eligible for prime, choice, and select. If an animal is older, I don't remember, I think it goes up, the next cutoff is at 72 months of age. An animal that's 72 months of age is not going to be eligible for prime or choice. It will go to, I'll have to look it up real quick. But there's 8 quality grades, including canner and utility. And those older cows, say you have a cow that's been in your herd for a while and she's getting some age on her and you're selling her, or she's going lame or something, and you cull her out of your herd, she didn't breed back, whatever reason. If she's not less than 30 months of age, she's not going to be in those prime cuts, or the prime grades, or the prime or choice or select grade. She's going to fall down lower in the scale. The canner and utility, the canners are going to be, I don't even know if that's for human consumption, more like for beef stews and soups. Utility, I think it's just going to, is that for human consumption too, John?
I don't think you'll see it that way. I think that's more of a byproduct type deal.
Yeah, I think she's probably going to go for dog food. They're going to be pretty thin. They're going to be pretty old. I'll have to do some research and get back with you tomorrow or next week on that one, Keith. But it's based on age.
Have you ever noticed in, say, grocery store ads, and I noticed one last night, local establishment was running ribeyes on sale for $5.99, and they had USDA inspected. They didn't give you a grade. used to have or at one time there was a local store here that would do USDA inspected select, and implying that that was one of the better grades. And the average buying consumer would not be aware of the designation of prime, choice, and select. So, they advertise it select, which gives you the connotation that you're buying the best quality, and it's actually a third grade. So, you got to watch when you're purchasing this beef that's on ad from these different retail establishments.
It's interesting you say that, Mr. Harris, because I was with my wife, and Food Lion, they have the ribeye sections, which are like $8.99 for ribeye, and
Yep.
right next to it, it's called a Denver steak, and on the surface, it weighs the same, looks the same, but it was for $4.99, almost half the price.
Yep.
And I asked the butcher, and he says, "Oh, well, that's really is just the heart of the chuck steak that they've cut out, which looks like the ribeye."
Right.
And he said you couldn't cook it like a ribeye; you'd have to put in a crock pot or something. But I was just thinking the naive consumer think that they were buying a steak because it said Denver steak on it, and I've never heard that called that before.
That's
I
what you call
haven't either. It's
marketing.
it's a new cut of meat they've come up with. But see, that can be kind of deceiving and would hurt people because they think it's a steak, they think they could go throw that on the grill. When if it came from the chuck, we probably need to slow cook that up a little bit.
But like
Other
shoe
than the
leather.
flat iron. Yeah, now the flat iron steak comes from the chuck, and it's really, really tender. But Keith, here's a picture of a steak, prime, choice, and select.
That's a good one, Dwayne.
That's funny with today's
So
market,
you
the
can
healthy.
really see that. What's that?
I would say with today's consumer, health conscious, it looks like they would choose the choice with the less fat, thinking as a healthier cut of meat.
Right.
your
If
dentist-
you go to
dentist
Ruth
approves of
Chris's
that.
or the Chop House, this is what you're going to get. That's going to be your best eating experience. That's going to be flavorful. You can almost cut that with a fork. It's going to be tender.
And the majority of that prime beef is not available through grocery stores.
Yeah,
It goes
you're not
into
going to see that.
production.
You'll see choice. You'll see choice a lot at the grocery stores. But you're not. That prime is going to go for is going to go more for commercial restaurants.
And it'll make a difference as to the price point in the restaurants that you deal with. If you're looking at Golden Corral or something of that type, you're going to be more in that low-end choice or select compared to the Chop House or the others that will have the higher-end stuff.
So, ideally, we're going to want our cattle to great choice. A high percentage of our calves, we want them to great choice. But anyway, it's what I was telling you about utility. You have the three lowest grades for those old cows. Very rarely you're not going to see it sold as a cut meat. It's often used for ground beef or in canned products from, say, like chili to dog food. And the standard and commercial grades. Usually stores when they have it sell it as an ungraded by, an ungraded store brand. It's not graded choice, prime, or select. It is, it's going to be a little bit tougher. You probably want to marinate that beef before you cook it. Or use some type of tenderizing agent on it. So, anyway, meat quality is something that we select for. We kind of got sidetracked there. How else are we going to select animals? What's going to be some of our criteria other than conformation, growth, carcass quality, if we have that genetic information? If you're going to go buy a bull or go buy some cows, what are you going to look for? Are you going to look at the history of its dam, of its mother, or its sire, the dad? Those are a couple terms you need to know. Sire is the father, dam is the mother. Ideally, you want to look at the performance. You want to see what their sire and their dam's done. If they have any siblings or half siblings out there, you want to see what they've done. And if it's available, you want to look at those DNA markers. And a lot of purebred breeders, they'll give you this information. It's out there. You buy semen. You can buy semen and artificially inseminate your cows, and these semen companies will give that information's out there on what's been going on with those bulls. If they're not a really young bull, if it's a yearling, if it's a real young bull, he doesn't have any babies out there yet, any calves, but you can see the history of his sire and his dam and grandparents. Same thing with selecting horses. For those of you that have horses and in performance industry, you want to know that performance record of the mother of that horse is, and the sire of that horse, or any offspring, or any siblings of that horse you're looking to buy. All that increases the value of that horse if its sire and dams has produced winners. Same thing with cattle, only we're looking at meat and quality and growth. Any questions about selection criteria? You beef people, y'all agree with me or disagree with me?
I agree.
Any other traits y'all look for that we didn't mention?
No, I think you covered most of them.
Okay. Now, you said y'all like tall cattle. And that's fine. If you like tall cattle, some people like smaller type cattle, some people like big cattle. What would be the main advantage of real, big cows? Say like a cow that weighs about 1,400 pounds. What would be an advantage of a cow like that?
You talking about a heifer?
Well, say a heifer or a cow that's in your breeding herd.
Well, like a bull, like it'd be able to stand it being on its back and stuff like that.
Okay. They could handle the mature bulls. They're not going to break down when that heavy bull breeds them. What other advantages would you have?
I mean, just like earlier, you know, I was talking about how they would most likely they would have like the same genes in their calves that they're like the calves that come off of them. They'll end up carrying the same genes and stuff like that. They'll
Oh,
be tall and stuff like that.
okay, so you'd have heavier bigger calves, hopefully, right?
Yes, sir.
What would be some disadvantages of a big old cow? I mean, a 1,400-pound cow is a pretty good sized cow, right?
They'd eat more definitely.
Yeah, they definitely eat more. Compared to a 1,200-pound cow, she's going to eat a lot more. Or a 1,000-pound cow. So, you know, there's trade-offs, okay, of whether you know, and it's going to depend on your operation. If you have the feed resources to handle those big cows and to feed them and to do it economically, you can get by with those. If you don't have the feed sources available to you, you're going to be buying a lot of feed for that bigger cow. So, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It's just one of those things that's different with everybody's operation. Personally, I don't like a real big cow. I like a cow that weighs about 1,100 pounds. To me, that's an ideal size for the forage, for the feedstuffs that we have available and the forage that we have available here in our part of the country. You know, that tends to work for us. Now, there's some people around here that have cows that weigh probably about 1,400, 1,300 to 1,400 pounds. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It's just they've got different resources than what I have. So you know, it's different on everybody's farm. Okay, you just gotta, you know, everybody's farm's different. It's not gonna make it right. It's not gonna make it wrong. It just makes it different. And if it works and you make money, that's the important part. So keep things in mind, keep things in perspective, because the real world's a whole lot different than textbook. Okay. We talked about breeds of horses and common breeds of horses. What are some common breeds of beef cattle?
Black Angus.
Black Angus.
Charlotte.
What did you say?
Charlotte.
Charolais. Herefords.
Simmental.
You know, we don't see a lot of Red Angus in this country, but they are good. They are a breed of cattle. They do well. They're one of my favorite breeds, but that's just personal. Okay, I heard another answer? Somebody else speak.
I said the Simmental.
Simmental, very popular breed. They come from France or Germany. They're from Europe originally, Germany, I think. What else? You said Simmental. What's another one from that area that's very popular?
Limousine.
Limousines.
And Polled Herefords.
Okay, Polled Herefords. They're from England. Geltby. I was thinking of Geltbys. They come from Germany as well. They're very popular. Angus
Holstein.
cattle. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
You know, like a Holstein, like dairy cattle.
Okay. You know, we typically think of dairy cattle like Holsteins as being dairy cattle. But boy, they sure contribute a lot to the beef industry. What's the chances, you know, of a calf being born a male or a female? about 50-50, right? Unless you buy, and you can buy semen that's been graded. It's been, to have a bull. It's been, how do you call it? They can separate the semen that's going to sire a heifer from semen that will sire a bull calf. So unless you pay that, buy semen that, increases your chances of a heifer or bull, but anything else, any other semen you buy or bull you use, you have about a 50-50 chance to get a bull or a heifer calf, right? Y'all agree? So on a dairy farm, can you milk male cattle? No, you can't. All those bull calves, unless they're from an exceptional cow, they're going to get castrated. And then what happens when they get castrated? They're a steer. And they're going to be grazed, they're going to grow, they're going to be sent to a feedlot, and they're going to be in the grocery store. The dairy industry provides a lot of beef. Typically, we don't think of them as beef cattle, but in reality, the dairy industry contributes a lot to the beef industry. Glad you pointed that out. There's a lot of producers in their area that will buy Holstein steers and graze them. But typically, it's not a beef breed, but they are used for beef. Any other beef breeds you can think of? How about Brahma cattle and Brahma cross cattle? They're, typically we think of them as being bucking cattle, right? The bucking bulls at rodeos. They are a beef animal. And if you go down to Florida, the Gulf Coast of Texas, anywhere along that Gulf Coast, you're going to see a lot of they call them ear cattle or a common name is ear cattle because Brahma have really big ears and they pass that trait on. And you'll see a lot of the Brahma cross cattle down there in the Gulf Coast. They can handle the heat. They do better with handling flies and mosquitoes and those pests. You don't see them a lot in their part of the country because it's pretty cold, and they don't handle the cold as well as a continental breed. Continental breeds come from Europe, basically. So there's several different breeds of cattle. They all have their advantages. They all have their disadvantages. And again, it's what works for you and your marketing and your resources and your marketing of cattle and your markets. So, but Angus is probably by far the most popular breed of cattle. Simmentals, Gelbies, they're pretty popular. They're typically a larger frame cattle, growthier, and they cross up really well with Angus. The limousines, they are a heavily muscled breed of cattle. They're very lean, and they're heavy muscled. Charolais are very similar, tend to be very, very heavily muscled. They kind of got, when they first came into our area, I don't know how long ago they came into our area, but I know when I was a kid back in the 70s, they kind of had the reputation of being pretty wild. We had a couple, and we couldn't keep them in. But, they got pretty popular as a terminal, what's termed as a terminal sire. Those old cows, a very popular cross back when I was a kid, was a Hereford and Angus, and then they would put a Limousine bull, or they would put a Charolais bull on that cow, on that cross. Boy, they sure made some pretty calves. But several different beef breeds out there. You need to know a few of them for the exam. Any questions about the beef industry? All right.
I do have one question. So, how does
hold on a second. Keith, hold on a second. I got a question here. Are shorthorn cattle a breed? Yes, they are a breed. They came from England. And they're red or white or roaned out. They kind of, I think they're to me, you know, they're a gentle cow like a Hereford. They're a good cow, and they've kind of gone. There's two strains of shorthorns. You got the beef strain of shorthorn, and then you got the milk and shorthorns. It's a dairy breed. They were kind of a dual purpose breed, and then they've been selected for either milking or beef now. Keith, what was your question?
was a farm by me. They've just started a breed of cattle, beef cattle from Scotland, and they're the hairiest looking things I've ever seen, and they're relatively small in size compared to a typical steer. Do you know much about them?
They're the Scottish Highlanders.
And what's the purpose of them?
It's a breed called the Scottish Highlanders, and they are very hairy. They come from a very cold climate, very rough climate, and that hair gives them a lot of protection. I haven't been around them much, so I don't know if they're crazy or not. There's a guy, one of the farms in this area used to raise them. He claimed that they were the tenderest beef he ever ate. And I know when I've been at the livestock market, and they would go through, they did not sell very well. They brought very cheap. But I think he had a market specifically he sold to. They're what? Yeah, they are high maintenance cattle. In the summertime, it gets too hot for them here. But they're, people do raise them. They are a breed. I don't know what. I just know he said they were very tender. I couldn't tell you anything more about them.
Thank you.
Okay, what's your question?
I remember when I was a kid, Herefords were small, pretty heavy. As I grew up, Herefords were long, pretty heavy. Like big fuzzy, longer legs, bigger frame, more teeth. That's called the big price. It's all second.
It's the way genetics is taking cattle. Back in the 50s, the cattle industry got on this kick of, they called them belt buckle cattle. If you ever look at old photographs from the 50s of people showing cattle, they would have steers ready for slaughter, and they weren't any taller than your belt buckle. So they were called belt buckle cattle. They were they carried a dwarf gene. And they bred for that for a while, for a few years. Now, that's considered an undesirable trait. We like them a lot larger, a little bigger, growthier, framier. And so that's where it's gone. Herefords used to be probably the most popular cattle in the United States. Angus started their deal with certified Angus beef and the eating qualities of Angus beef, how it's superior. They did a great job marketing that. And Herefords hadn't traditionally been known for carcass quality, and that hurt them big time, because now if you do not have black cattle when you sell your cattle, unless you're selling by the truckload, you will take a hit if they're red, because they think red cattle typically have a Hereford influence and they're not going to marble.
But I don't like certified Angus beef. There's black shoreline that has black certified Angus beef for high speed. That's the only thing.
Anymore, that certified Angus beef, they do have to have a percentage of black in them. And so black cattle started bringing a premium, and her Charolais traditionally were white. They are getting that black gene in them. Gelvies were traditionally red. Now you see a lot of black and promoted as carrying the black gene. Simmentals were traditionally red. Now they got the black gene. So because of what Angus has done with their promotion, we're seeing a lot of cattle that were traditionally red. Now they're black hided. Yeah, they've been crossed up. And so, because they want to take advantage of that certified Angus beef, because if that hides black and they don't have any Brahma influence, it could possibly go certified Angus beef. All because of the hide color. But Hereford, they've made a lot of progress in the last several years with carcass quality and growth. In my opinion, they're one of the best breeds out there for a commercial cattle producer. Yeah, and yep, safety reasons. And but they're to me, they're one of my favorite. They're one of my favorite breeds. Especially in a crossbreeding situation. It's hard to beat that Angus Hereford cross. But anyway, that's right. Any other questions about the beef industry? Well, let's move on to the dairy a little bit. There's 6 primary dairy breeds that you need to be aware of and know for the exam. One of them are Holsteins. They're the black and white ones. Jersey is another breed. They're a small cow. They probably weigh about 800 pounds. You used to see a lot of those on farmsteads. People that have a milk cow out back, it's usually a Jersey. They're small, give enough milk for a family, for them to consume and for them to sell. Nice cow. Another breed is the brown Swiss. They're a big cow. Guernsey is another dairy breed. They're spotted. They're usually red, a reddish color, and with spots on them. No, those are Ayrshires. I'm sorry. Our Ayrshires is another dairy breed, and they're red with spots on them. They're not as big as Holsteins. They're a smaller cow. Guernseys are there, and the 6th breed is the milking shorthorn. But those are the 6 primary dairy breeds: Holstein, Jersey, brown Swiss, Guernsey, Ayrshire, and milking shorthorns. When do you think they started using cattle for milk production? Thing it's been around for a while? They've been milking cows since about 9,000 BC. Okay? So we've been using milk from cattle for several thousands of years. The laws that govern milk production, they started to come into effect in around 1900 in the United States, when we started putting regulations on there to help to ensure milk quality and some safety issues. Started coming about in 1900. Milk production in the last 40, 50 years has increased by over 30%. Now, what do you think that big increase of milk production is? What's the single most reason for that increase in milk production? Not population growth. Why do cows start producing more milk? Genetics. That's right. We have made leaps and bounds in genetic progress in the dairy industry, pork industry, beef industry, poultry industry, and also sheep and goats and horses. The genetics it's a booming industry, guys, I'm telling you. And this big increase we've had in milk production in the last 40 years has been due to genetics. To tell you, between 1950 and 2008, dairy farms have declined over 90%. But the herd size has increased 10 times that. No, that's just now coming about. It's called the economies of scale. The dairy industry, very mechanized industry now. You have automatic milkers. It's very technical with all the milking machines and all the laws that they have to follow, the nutrition, the management, and the small people's gotten out and the big people's gotten bigger. We now have about 9 million cows. Between 1960 and 2008, the number of milk cows declined by about 50%. Number of farms went down 90%. Cow numbers went down 50%. And that's because we've gotten so much more in production per cow. We're getting a lot of milk from those milk cows. Most dairy farms are milking over 200 cows. We had a student. How many cows did Tanya milk? About 400?
She's about 400 to 450, and John Hammock's dairy is a little better than 800.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what John milked. I knew he's right around 1,000, so
Yeah.
it's about 800. But we've had some dairy farmers here in our class before. Went there to Patrick Henry. Tanya Hodges, their dairy farm milked about 400, as John was saying, and then we had the Hammocks, and they milked about 800. What about Caleb? He was quite a bit smaller, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what he's doing. I haven't had any contact with him for about a year, but the Hammocks have plans and visions to go to 1,200. They just got to redo their milking parlor, which they've got the plans. They just haven't initiated yet because of low milk prices for the last 18 to 24 months.
Right. So I wish I had with the textbook, there came a disc with the pictures from the book in there. So look at your textbook. You need to be reading these chapters, by the way, with me. But there's the different breeds that we've mentioned with beef and dairy. They are in your textbook, so you can look at them, know what they look like. And there's different types. There's some pictures of different types of milking parlors. A parlor, the cows go in there just to be milked. It's just in the milking parlor, but it's a barn milk. And a lot of different varieties with that. There's these big dairies. These cows go in and they're on the carousel. They'll go in to be milked, and that whole table turns. And by the time it makes a revolution, they've been milked, and they just head out, and another cow takes its place. It's pretty big how they've got it. Pretty neat. So we're out of time, guys. So we'll pick this up next week. Hopefully we'll get through the chapter and finish it up. I appreciate y'all's discussion and your questions. We'll meet here tomorrow for lab. We're going to start our beef quality assurance.
Are we doing anything tomorrow?
Well, that's what I was drawing a breath to tell you.
It would be nice if you came to participate.
We'll do one next week, try to get a double dip.
Greg
Yeah, I
doesn't
just,
sit here by himself.
I didn't make it last Friday. My
Robert
head got
out of town. He's at a
I got
meeting.
plenty of air in the car.
Meeting with
I remember
PDAX
when
about their slaughterhouse.
today because I got, I had
I
court.
don't think Greg just wants to sit here and look at my ugly mug.
All right,
A couple of-
good to go.
I have no question.
I didn't bring any answers.
What? I'll find.
Not the
I'll get
mid-cycle
somebody
labs
lined
or
up.
something, they cook.
What we've done, because there's always some
Yeah, I may call her and see if she's for it.
that
I'd make
exist.
that.
Usually we'll have about 7 or 8. What we'll do, we'll give you an assignment like
We don't even have to do that.
like
You
the
got
paper
that.
on a commercial dairy operation, whatever we do.
All right, okay.
Yeah, we have to do that. It's
All right,
just no-
sounds good.
Even for a man.
Hey,
You just want me to email the plan.
we got an exam,
You can,
security class.
Okay, and then can I email it to Dwayne?
yeah.
The animal? Okay, I don't have to post it on Blackboard?
No.
Okay, because I didn't really understand it, the way she put it in the email, and I was like,
There you just going to study. The PowerPoints about biosecurity. It's 4 phases of
That's
biosecurity.
fine. I'm for always for easy.
Those terms we went over, the Eden definitions. It's all on Blackboard. 4 phases of cattle production. I'm not going to ask you to balance a ration on the exam, but you need to learn the 4 phases of production. For what? You trying to figure out gill grade? Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about gill grade. I'm not going to make you do that. You got light. You got your live carcass weight. It's going to consist of your kidney, the percent of kidney pelvic fat, and kidney, pelvic, and heart fat, muscling, fat, and the and the carcass weight, the live weight, the carcass weight, and the dressing percent. Yeah, the hot weight, cold weight, and the live weight. I don't know. I'll have to look it all up. You can look at it. It's on the internet. Yeah. Just Google how to determine yield grade. Here, I'll find it real quick.
I'll do it.
Well, I told y'all wrong. USDA 1's most desirable, but industry average 3. Remind me to say that, Jimmy. So, we're
There
going
it
to have a
is.
preliminary yield grade, figuring out how big that ribeye area is in the carcass weight. And
There it is.
then you're going to come in the fat thickness, the ribeye area between the 12th and 13th rib, the live weight, and the dressing percent. Let's estimate carcass weight,
On the yield grade.
percent internal fat. You go from there.
How much of your work have you done? A lot of it. Just on paper. She went out there. I ain't got a computer.
He doesn't do anything if you're not here. I'm surprised he came to class.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of wondering. I'm good about nothing class. It's just that computer work ain't good. I got down this morning. I said we're gonna be on time. We're doing good. We got down there. So I just got to drop my ears off and go back and pick them up after class. I was talking to him about what I want done. I turned around. There he is holding 30/30 filling out paperwork.
All right.
Hey,
See ya.
tomorrow.
All right. See you tomorrow.